Good morning. Good morning, Chicago and the rest of the world. Welcome to the Money, Sex, Gen X podcast. I am your host with the most, the man with the plan, the Scotty Pippen of podcast pimping. I want to welcome you to season 4, episode number 4, 10 things they don't tell you about real estate. I am never alone. I am joined here by the titan of teen tech.
Come on.
Music mogul in the making.
Wow.
The Rashid Wallace of stock market knowledge. My co-host, my brother, the homie, Big Stu.
Hey, what's cracking-lating?
What's going on, Big Stu? How you doing today, brother?
Life is good. As you know, anytime I'm showing up with you on MSG, it's a good thing, man.
No doubt.
No doubt. How about you? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing wonderful, man. This is a topic that I've been waiting to talk about for a long time. You know, this is something that you and I talk about pretty frequently. So I'm looking forward to us dropping a few jewels and learning a few things in this episode.
All right. Well, before we get started with the episode, I just want to remind people real quick to go and cop your merch.
Indeed. I think we got some new flavor in the merch shop.
Yeah, man. So go check out shop moneysexgenx.com or just go moneysexgenxpodcast.com and find the link to the shop, man. We got some cool stuff over there. So absolutely go pick up you some merch. Winter and fall merch and summer and spring merch. It's all there, man. So that's some good stuff, man.
All right. So I know, like you said, I know fall and winter will be upon us at some point. We got a lot of nice tees that you can layer. You know, some people like to do the layer stees, so you can definitely do that. The other thing I want to ask people to do, we've been doing this a lot this season. We want you to drop MSG 100 in the comments. We know sometimes when you're watching the show live, you might not feel totally comfortable chiming in, but we just want to know that you're out there and that you're rocking with us. We want to give a special shout to France, Germany, and right now the continent of Africa. All three are really downloading a lot of the audio episodes, so that's cool. We hope y'all keep rocking with us.
Keep rocking with us. Appreciate that. And go like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, man. So, let's dig in. I know this is your area. You're super excited about this.
Yeah, man.
Let's talk about it, man.
10 things now let me say this the right way because we title our shows very specifically. So the way that this is supposed to, now you've got it typed out, right? I just got to make sure I emphasize it.
Come on. Right? What's the right way? Where's the proper emphasis to go?
The proper emphasis is 10 things they don't tell you about real estate.
The focus is on the 10 things they don't tell you.
That's right.
About real estate.
And I want everybody to use their imagination to try to figure out who they is. That might have a different meaning for everybody.
We know who they is. We know who they is.
You know what I mean? And hopefully you know who you are. So you can kind of piece it together from there. But yeah, I've personally been dealing with this asset for about 20 years in one form or another. I started out in sort of a law environment where I didn't know anything about real estate, and I was able to sit at the feet of some people who have been doing it for many, many years. And I just started to soak up a lot of knowledge and understanding. First, it was more technical, Stu. It was reading title commitments and legal descriptions and easements and encroachments and all that stuff. And then it went further than that into, okay, well, what if I want to participate in getting the game myself? And so that's like sitting at the other side of the table. And so over time, I've been able to kind of have that point of view. What about yourself? How have you interacted with this asset over the years?
I'm the same way, man. in a moment of disclosure, of Stu's moment of transparency. Back in the my younger days, out of desperation, I got a real estate license.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. I took a I don't know if I can't remember if it was a 1-day class or a 1-week class. I think it was more like I really want to say it was a 1-day class. Maybe it was a week. Let me just defer. Maybe it was a week. Took a 1-week class and took the test and passed it.
Wow.
And actually,
that's not an easy test either.
No, man, no. But I was super interested in real estate. So I understand. And this was after I had bought my first house.
Okay.
So I got some insights. I was like, dang, I wish they would have told me
no doubt
about this when I was on the purchase side of this stuff.
Preach, no doubt.
Yeah.
Same with me, man. I was like, wow. So yeah, I mean, that shout out to you, and I mean, kudos to you really for passing that test. I also took the course, and I remember it was a big yellow book in Illinois. And man, that was some tough information to get through, man. I mean, you passed it, so I take my hat off to you. I never took the test, but because I figured out about 3/4 of the way through that I didn't think being a broker was going to be good for me. But I learned so much in the process that, man, it kind of changed my mentality on real estate. So yeah. Now let me ask you something. So after you did that, how did you, obviously you were like, okay, well, I could have did some things differently, but just on a day-to-day level, did you kind of look around you and see things in sort of a different way at that point?
Absolutely. One thing that still sticks out to me today is vacant lots.
Okay.
Like how vacant lots can be commandeered if you don't pay attention to them.
No doubt.
For example, tell me if I'm right about this. This was a long time ago. But let's say there's a vacant lot in my neighborhood and I start to park my vehicles on this vacant lot, or I put up something, build something on top of something that's movable, but I start to put stuff on this vacant lot.
Right.
If I remember, it's like after a number of years, maybe it was like some 5 or 10 years. If nobody comes and says, hey, move your stuff, then I can take ownership of this lot.
No doubt. Yeah. No, I remember that. Yes. It's a
like,
certain type
that's crazy.
I forget the technical name, but it's some type of easement. And I remember these words, Stu. It has to be open and notorious, I think. You remember that?
Yeah.
So it's like you're on the land and it's obvious, but the owner is just not paying attention.
Yeah. So I wonder about that. And another thing that stuck out to me as I think about it was that really kind of created a soft spot for me in this space was how property can be transfer ownership based on tax delinquencies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that put me kind of at odds with myself.
Right.
Like, man, it's great for the investor or for the realtor or the developer or whoever's looking for the property. Man, they find somebody who is down on their luck, behind on their taxes. They can get the property for taxes.
No doubt. Yeah.
It's like, dang.
Right. Yeah, man, that's a big deal. That's one of the main things that I was working on when I was younger. So they have the county assessor's office that you've probably been to, and they have these large books. What they did back then, they probably digitized them now, called tract. What do they call them? I don't remember the name, but they were these large books, and the books basically had all of the tax delinquencies, and you could go look it up from the PIN number.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are kind of new to real estate, the PIN number is the property index number. It's like the social security number for the property. So, you're exactly what you're dealing with. But I used to be one of the people that would go to the books and figure out what the actual delinquencies were. And then if I remember correctly, you could get this little report that kind of summarized it. So you can go either pay your taxes or create a strategy to get somebody else's property based on the tax status.
Dang. Yeah, so those kind of things stuck out to me in my experience of being a realtor. So I wasn't a broker.
Okay.
And a realtor, is for those who are, you already, I also remember that it's so important to pronounce it that way. Not a realtor.
Okay.
Can't say realtor. If you say realtor, that means you don't know what you're talking about.
That's the realtor. So that's the wrong pronunciation.
Yeah, it's not a realtor. It's like realtor. You don't know. It's a realtor.
Realtor.
And a realtor is like the agent, the real estate agent, the person who is responsible for primarily the buy or the sale of a property.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't managing the loan or doing the loan origination or any of that. I wasn't the broker, but I was a realtor for a very prominent agency, Baird and Warner, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's right. It was that reaction. So it's like, oh, yeah, you was official, Yeah,
no doubt.
And
I thought you were about to say this other one that's out south a lot. I'm not gonna say the name, but it starts with a K and they have like a red.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, I know people who work there. Yeah.
That's the one I was trying to be a part of initially when I was studying.
So when I know you said you didn't want to say the name, I don't mind saying the name. So this is blink your eye, or blink your eye if you're talking about Keller Williams or Keller. You didn't say it, but no, but they was I like them. I like them. I got people
I don't have a problem with them. It was them, and they had a joint. They had an office right down the street from me in Bronzeville on 47th.
Yes.
Yeah. So man. Okay. Well, I got to learn something new about Big Stu today, and you may have told me that I'm getting a little older, so I might probably remember. But okay. Yeah. So you've been deep in the game. And so everybody out there, the reason why we thought this was so important is Stu and I are just trying to really add on to certain conversations. We know that a lot of people talk about real estate, but we want to add on in a very specific way. And today's conversation is really kind of getting deeper into some things that aren't discussed as much about real estate. And Stu, we did come up with these 10 things, so we'll kind of shout them out. The first one, and I know we're both into hip hop, but I don't know if I necessarily processed this enough, but they say that, and this is our number one, rappers love real estate.
Yeah,
rappers love real estate. Now we know that rappers are commonly associated with cars and jewelry. But I don't know if we see the images of them sort of loving real estate. Now, I do have this image in my head of Rick Ross with the expansive properties. I do think he's done a good job of showing himself in that environment. But I don't know if I kind of thought about anybody else before doing this show. What about you?
So when I think about rappers and real estate, the first person that always comes to my mind is T.I.
T.I., okay.
Tip. Right.
Yeah.
But when I hear this, before we brought up this conversation, and when I heard about rappers loving real estate, I didn't understand their involvement in real estate. Even T.I., I understand T.I. bought up the neighborhood, and that's the go-to statement.
Sure.
I don't know what that looks like. So does he own all the houses in this block? I don't know. Does he own I have no idea. Does he own the McDonald's and the, Steak and Shake? And does he own this a commercial development? And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know. I'm interested in knowing how he leverages his money to quote unquote buy up the neighborhood.
Okay.
And I never really also considered how they sit down. Is it them doing the deals, or is it them telling their attorneys to do the deals? Are they going to look at the properties? It's this Tip specifically. The Tip go look at the properties, or is he saying, take X amount of percentage of my money and invest it in real estate? I don't know what that looks like. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so I've worked on what you would call celebrity deals before, and I can't speak for Tip specifically, but I can say it's in these situations, it's typically the celebrity, like you said, leveraging their legal team. So the celebrity or the rapper will say, hey, you know what? I live in this area, or I used to live over here. I want to make XYZ happen. And they start having these exploratory conversations. So they'll go to the law firm and it'll be a whole table full of people, and they just start talking about how can we possibly make this a reality. Now, what the lawyers are good at doing is kind of telling you, you know what, if we can make this happen, here's how you can get money from the city. Here's how you can get money from the federal government. There's this abatement program, like they'll bring the different sources to the table. And when you think about it, of course they would do that, right? Because they're going to get hired to do it. So they're kind of telling you the feasibility of making the deal happen. So that's how it typically goes down. So it's typically not the celebrity themselves. And in this, I'm kind of thinking of another rapper that he's probably the first person that I heard dealt with real estate. And that's, Slim Thug.
Yeah.
Out of Houston.
Slim Thugger. Yeah.
Yeah. Slim Thug has been doing his thing in real estate for many, many years. Now, I'm like you. I don't know his day to day. I don't know if it's residential, commercial, what it is. I just know that I read that about him consistently for many years.
Now, here's a conversation that doesn't really come up. I think Jay-Z attempted to talk about, he hit on it in OJ's story, the song OJ's story. He could have bought, instead of buying, he could have bought some property in that neighborhood in New York called Dumbo, but instead he was buying a Lambo,
Right.
I know that a lot of rappers, a lot of their money comes from the streets. Why do you think rappers love real estate so much? And I'm alluding to, is it because it's a great place to clean the money, or is there something else? Is it just a long-term smart play?
Yeah, I think it's more a thing of, if you're in an environment where you're kind of showing what you have all the time. So I'm showing you the chains, I'm showing you the Coogee sweater, whatever it is, I'm showing you the Louis Vuitton belt. The real estate to me is just another great way to show you my wealth.
I own that.
You can just ride down the street and I can be like, yo, that's mine. That's mine. You know what I mean? Where if I did it in a stock environment, I'm not going to open up my stock portfolio and be like, here's all my stocks. But you know what I mean? Like, we're already out and about. Stu, you own that? So I believe that that's what it is. And I do think some of these people are so intelligent that they also understand the concept of leverage, because they're leveraging so many different things in their music career. I think it's easy for them to make that transition here and say, hey, I'll leverage somebody else's dollars to get these properties the same way I leverage somebody else's dollars to do this record.
So explain leveraging or leverage. Can you explain leverage a little bit?
Of course, no doubt. Yeah, leverage is one of my favorite words. It's basically using one thing to do something else, right? Or in finance terms, it's using somebody else's something to do something else. So if I'm leveraging Big Stu, it means in real estate, I'm trying to use your money to do something for me, right?
Well, that's one of the basic foundations of business, OPM.
Other people's money. Yes, sir.
Other people's money, man. So
yeah,
other people's money is basically leveraging. It's leverage. It's an example of leverage.
Yeah, it could be, but it can go outside of money too, though. It can go to, like, I might be able to leverage your audience.
Or your reputation.
Your reputation. So say Stu has a large audience and I'm trying to tap into it. I don't have it. So I'm going to tap into that's leverage too. Right. So it exists all throughout our society. Just a lot of times we might not know that that's what's happening.
Let me pause for 1 second real quick here, brother, and just say, Hey, man, you are rocking it today.
I appreciate it, fam.
With the low. I don't even know that's not even that's the rugby, the low rugby.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And the Kango, bro.
No doubt. No doubt.
With the MSG red on the Kango.
MSG red. I'm glad you caught that. No doubt.
Yeah, I see it, MSG red.
I didn't know you were going to do the spotlight, but since you did, this is the Olympic. I got the Olympic cookie on here, I got the little Kango. So, I'll try to stay fresh the older I get,
Man, I meant to tell you that offline, man, but you are rocking it today, dog.
It, man. I appreciate it. Well, you know what? When you are on something with Big Stu, you gotta show up right and exact. And let me tell y'all out there, I hang out with Big Stu. We've been hanging out a little bit. He's fresh to death every time. On camera and off. So I had to do what I had to do.
I have 3 shirts and 2 pair of pants, brother.
So you rotate heavy rotation. Huh?
Heavy rotation.
Don't believe, audience, don't believe that. That is definitely not true. Nah, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate
no doubt, son. No doubt.
So this rappers love real estate. So the example that our researchers pulled, I think people remember Juicy J from 3-6 Mafia. I didn't know this, but he started out investing in real estate. He bought his first house in Memphis. Everybody knows that he's from out there in Memphis. He said he purchased that crib for $80,000 in cash, and then he sold it for $175,000.
Okay.
Quick $95,000. And then he said from there he began to buy more and more homes. And then back to your vacant lot example, he said he started to buy land.
Ooh, so those are possibly two different transactions. You buy the land, and then somebody can own the land, and somebody can own I remember this term, the improvements on the land.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And that takes us into the definition. But before we jump into that definition, because we do need to define what is real estate, we had this example of Kanye West. Let me see if I can pull that link up. There was this thing that you and I were talking about where Kanye was doing this affordable housing prototype.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we can pull that up, but it basically had this like Star Wars type of look to it, these little huts. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to make this happen in LA. He was trying to do like a public-private partnership or whatever. I just thought that was interesting that his mind would even be going into affordable housing, because that's a very specific part of real estate, affordable housing. So
now, then something happened where somebody came and told him that he couldn't build it or something. They look Star Wars-ish. Is that what I'm
hearing? If you all can remember the huts from Star Wars, they look like that. And then I guess he started building without getting the right approvals from LA or whatever. So I guess they were talking about it, but he didn't get the approval, because that's 2 different departments, right? You could be exploring something with one department, but you still got to do what you got to do in terms of getting the permits and all of that. So I guess they shut it down. There you go. That's it. Yeah, there's these huts, and see, those were affordable housing. So affordable housing, as we all probably know, is like when the government is sort of creating housing for people and then allowing them to live in it through some type of subsidy, meaning the government is going to pay for your rent, and then you pay a small portion to live in that environment. Mm-hmm. So those look interesting. I thought that was interesting. I would have liked to see how the inside of those look too.
And I understand that the reason they kind of broke them down, I think something like they had basements or something. They had an underground portion.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't just
that wasn't. Okay. Yeah, there was something under, and they were like, "No, that wasn't part of the agreement, so you can't have this thing here."
Okay. So I mean, this is a brother who's really obviously deep into real estate. We know about the homes and Calabasas and all that stuff, but like he's trying to take it beyond that and create housing for people. So maybe he'll revisit this project in the future. Kanye is definitely taking it to another level in terms of his how he's interacting with real estate. You know, it's one thing to have the homes in Calabasas and all that, but he's trying to get into the affordable housing game. So hopefully he will pick back up on that at some point. But maybe many of you never knew that he was doing that, because I didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. Let's get to number 2, Stu, the definition. So 10 things they don't tell you about real estate. So in the media, you're always hearing this word real estate, real estate, real estate. But do you hear the definition? So I pulled one. I want to talk to Stu about what our definition is, but I'm going to give you a formal definition. It says real estate is the property consisting of land and the buildings on it, along with its natural resources, Stu, such as crops, minerals, or water. It's immovable property of this nature, and it's an interest vested in this as an item of real estate, buildings, or housing in general. Now, that's kind of technical. I think the way I would sum this up is to say that real estate is the property, it's the land, and it's all the associated rights. So you have air rights, you have below surface rights that you were talking about a few minutes ago. So it's the real estate, the land. No, take that back. The real estate is the land, the property, and all of the associated rights, which can include air rights, like if you're in Times Square, you see all these billboards, or below surface rights, like if you have a basement or some other dwelling, like what Kanye was trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that yeah. So I always thought that was interesting. And then there's those rights, if I understand it correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. Those rights vary based on one, location, and whether it's residential. So it's called zoning, the location, whether or not it's a commercial property or whether or not it's a what's the other term? Residential property. Yeah. So, for example, although let's say I own, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. I do not own my home, right? This is going to come up in a minute. But let's say I own my home and in my backyard, I want to put a cell phone tower because, hey, I own this backyard and I own the air rights and the ground rights, the underground rights. But because it's a residential community, I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that. That's not something that I can do because it's residential. So I can't just put a 30-foot billboard on top of my house, right, in a residential community. So there are some slight nuances to that definition. Mm-hmm. But on the basic, let me try to just break it down one more time. This is for the people who got grades like I did in school. It's the dirt. The dirt. And anything you build on top of the dirt.
Okay, got you.
All right, and that's the real estate. So you can buy dirt, and you want to start a community garden, and then now you got crops. That's part of the real estate.
I love it. The dirt. And what you can build on the dirt. The only thing I'm gonna add to that, Stu, is, and then you got the part that you can't see with your eyes, which is the rights to the dirt. So, like say you had the air rights, like you said, you can't put the billboard on top of your house because of zoning. So you can see the dirt and you can see the house, but then there's these other parts of real estate that you can't see, but you might own or not own them.
So if I had like a oil well, like you said, and under the house,
right? Can you drill down there and get the oil? Maybe not. Here's another way that it comes in.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
I'm gonna use these houses in the shot. So you got a residential area in Chicago. You go in the back. There's an alleyway. So maybe you got your car garage, and then there's an alleyway. You probably don't own the alleyway. It's probably owned by the municipality because they got the light poles and the gas lines and all this other stuff. But you can't see their ownership, but you just have to reference it on a piece of paper on a legal document.
Crazy.
And they might have the rights to cut into your backyard to maintain the public utilities. That's another thing. So they get what they call an easement. It's a utility easement that says, hey, Stu, I can go on your backyard if I need to do some maintenance. A lot of people don't know that. As long as I'm doing it for that reason and I try to put it back how it was, I have that right. So
the people had a right to mess up your yard, y'all. And we see it all the time in the city.
Maybe.
They doing some stuff on the street and they need to tap into your front yard a little bit. So then they dig it up to get to that pipe underground. It's in the street, but there's a piece that taps into your house and and so then they'll do the work, they tear it up, they do the work, and then they do come back. In every case that I've seen, in many cases, probably, some cases they probably don't, but they do come back and they try to put the new patch of grass back, and no cost to you.
Indeed. So some people might be watching this like, well, why does that matter? Well, when you purchase your crib, you want to know, it'll show you on title who has those rights. They have something called a title commitment. And we don't want to get too technical on this episode, but this is important. If you're out there right now purchasing a residential or commercial property, there's a title commitment. And all it is a document that tells you all of the different rights that people have, and it confirms what property we're talking about. That's simple. Title commitment. And then you will get another document called a survey. And the survey will show you visually where's the easement for the utilities, where's this, where's that, where's the actual land that I own. So it's a visual representation of what you would see in the title commitment. Okay, so survey and title commitment. We don't get too technical, but two things to keep in mind.
So let's just understand, real estate is not just the house. I've heard of stories, or not just the property, the building. I've heard of stories where people have bought their house, but they did not own the land.
Exactly.
Gee whiz, can you imagine that?
Happens every single day.
Unreal.
Yeah, man. Just because people don't know, like they don't know to go get a title commitment. Maybe I'd be like, I'm not gonna get no lawyer. You run up on me and you like, yo, we run down and you're like, yo, E, I'm gonna go ahead and sell you this land. Give me 10 racks. I give it to you, but I'm like, all right, I'm good. And come to find out, I don't own it all because I didn't get the title commitment. So yeah, that's a big deal. Another thing, Stu, that comes up, we've all heard of this. And if you've been to Brooklyn, and you've been to the Barclays Center, this is a perfect example of this, something that comes up. It's called eminent domain.
Yeah.
So this is another part of real estate that you got to be thinking about that's not in your face, but it can happen. So Barclays was a bunch of residential homes around the area in Brooklyn. The government, through what they call eminent domain says we can basically take your property as the municipality and give you fair market value. As long as we give you fair market value back in return, we can take your property. And that's exactly what happened in Brooklyn. They took people's homes, they said they needed it, and they gave them fair value. Not necessarily market value, but fair value. Crazy. So that's something else to think about. It happens in Chicago all the time, especially when they're building schools and libraries. If you see a big school development in the Chi, they probably took some people's homes for that.
And sometimes it could be a good look for whoever lives in the house, but in many cases, when you're uprooting, you might be uprooting a family, that's been in that house for 50, 60 years, 40, 50 years, 60 years. And it's not that they don't need the money at this point. It's just like, dang, where I'm gonna go? I've been here my entire life. Like you asking me to pick up, and it ain't about the money. Like, man, it's like, yeah, that's tough. This is
where we live. Like, what about all the sentimental value This is where I grew up. This is where my grandparents bought this home. Now I will say, and this doesn't necessarily try to make it better, but they do have companies that'll help with the relocation. But still, like the sentimental value. So I'm glad we brought that up because that's part of real estate too, right? There's different levels of value. It's not just monetary.
It's been in my house. This house has been in my home, my family for 3 generations.
And you want to
build this, right? Well, that's fair market value. You've been in the house you've been in your family for 3 generations, but it's dilapidated.
Exactly.
And you don't want.
No, go ahead.
And you don't want to let it go because it has sentimental value.
Exactly. And if they come to you and say, Stu, we need the crib, we're going to give you $100,000 and you don't agree to it because they're going to give what they call an appraisal, which is just a document that says what's the value. Now you got to go to court. So we're saying all of this to say real estate is a really good asset, but there's a lot to think about other than just what you see. That's the point of all of it. So what's the definition? I like Stu's definition. It's the dirt. It's what's on top of the dirt. And then there's these invisible things that you just got to check into. How about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Me and Stu are giving you all some game that we had to pay a lot of money to get now.
Come on, it's free game.
Free game. We paid a lot of money.
No. It's coming. The life game. I don't know why I want to keep calling it free game. This is life game. This is life game.
No doubt. That's what it is. So let's get into number 3. So this is something that I don't know why I'm kind of slow sometimes, but I could not, Stu, understand. This is number 3, the difference between a mortgage and a note. I struggled with this for years.
I don't know the difference in this very moment. You about to put me on.
I couldn't get it, man. I'm like, what is the deal with this mortgage and the note thing? So here's what I learned through a lot of trial and error. All right. 2 documents. So if you me and Stu go buy a property next week. We go buy a condo together. We're going to do an investment deal together. We're going to buy it. When we sit at the table at closing, they're going to make us sign 2 documents. The mortgage says, now let me start with the note. The note is, in really simple terms, it's a promise to pay. Stu and Eric promised to pay the $500,000 for the property. Cool. So you sign that. So usually like a 1-page or a couple-page document. Set that to the side. The second document that you sign is the mortgage, and the mortgage says this, Stu. If Eric and Stu don't pay, the actual house is the collateral. What is collateral? You and I know this, but I'm going to say it for the benefit of the viewers. It just says it's what I'm going to get if you don't pay. So if Eric and Stu don't pay the $500,000, we get the property back. And that's what the mortgage is. So the note promised to pay. The mortgage says the collateral, what are we going to get if you don't pay? Well, we're going to get the property back.
Well, that's interesting because now when people say I got to pay my mortgage, it doesn't make sense anymore now in this very moment. It's just like, what you mean you got to pay your mortgage? You got to pay your note.
You're really paying the note. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You got to pay your note.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what confused me. It's like, why are they using that weight? But that's not, that's what
I got to pay my note. I have heard I got to pay my mortgage note.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've heard that.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
But there are 2 different documents.
2 different documents, 2 different concepts, because you could have a note without a mortgage. Right. So let's do another example. Say I had a car that I was buying. I have a car note.
Car note. Okay.
Right. But it has a clause in there that says if I don't pay, I don't get the car back. The bank doesn't get the car back. It's just unpaid. It'll just go on my credit. The note is just anytime, or say you lend me some money, like a lot of money, like $100,000, and you make me sign a note. It's just a promise to pay, but you might not ask for any collateral. You're basically just saying, dude, I need you to pay me my $100,000 back. And if you don't, then I'm going to take you to court, but I don't get anything.
Right. And those are instances a lot of times where you go to court and the judge rules in favor of, whoever you borrowed the money from. It's like, okay, well, you are liable. You are responsible for this payment. But if you still ain't got the money, you just went to court for the judge to say that what you already knew. But there's how you going to get the money. You still want your money.
True indeed. True indeed. And it's interesting because it's like, okay, so if that's the case, right? So we got this note. That's pretty fascinating to me that like this one document basically says that I have to pay it back, but you will look through society when you're reading the paper and you see that some things are secured and others aren't. So like you have a secured note and unsecured. So you start looking at the debt that people are taking out, you'll see these two key terms. You'll see secured and unsecured. Secured means that we got collateral. That's all it means. Unsecured means if I don't pay Stu back, Stu gets nothing directly. He can sue me and try to get money from my whatever, but there's no specific thing that he gets back.
And people, y'all stop throwing this term around because you a certain age, you're supposed to know this stuff. Stop acting like y'all know everything.
Yeah,
I never knew. So now it makes sense. I guess it's more crystallized. It makes clearer sense to me between a secured loan and an unsecured loan.
Absolutely.
Secured card versus an unsecured credit card. All right, okay. All right.
And it's interesting because I think as Black people, and I don't want to speak for all Black people, I think the problem is because we talk about stuff differently. Like instead of saying secure, we would just say, if I don't pay, I got to give you this. You know what I'm saying? Like we might say it more elegantly than that, but it's like we would say like, okay, if I don't pay Stu back, I signed a document that he could get all of my books in my house. We wouldn't use the word secure. It's like, what are you talking about? It's very like abstract. So we're just trying to make this more tangible, I guess. It's like we're talking about something very simple. If you get some money from somebody, either you gotta put something up or you don't.
Yeah, what's the collateral? Collateral, we know collateral.
We know collateral.
Yeah, and I got a little collateral, man. What's the collateral? What I get if you don't pay, man? Yeah. All right. So I get your whole CD collection.
I get your whole CD collection. I get your whole low collection.
I get your low collection. I get your Jordan collection. Your bow tie collection. It's like, no. Let me make sure I pay this fool his money.
Exactly. It's an incentive to pay.
Whoa, there you go. The mortgage is the incentive to pay.
Yeah,
the note is the promise to pay.
No doubt. And then this thing about this now, a lot of us are getting a little more advanced as we get in age. So we might be on the other side, right? So we're giving somebody a mortgage. Or like I said with my other example, Stu is lending me money and he's getting a note and some security. So it's not always somebody else. It could be beneficial to us if we're on the other side.
And is mortgage, obviously, this is mortgage is a term that's generally only used when talking about real estate?
Yes, from what I've seen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically it's specific to real estate. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's keep going, man. Let's go. We got some more heat in the chamber.
That was a great question, though. I like that. Here's one of my favorite ones, Stu. Number 4. And I'm very passionate about this. We're going to really get deep on this one. Renting is not always bad.
Wow.
Let me say that again for the people in the back. Renting is not always bad, Stu. What do you have to say about that?
You put me on this one. This is something that I've learned just within the last few years.
Okay.
Renting can be a leverage game.
Absolutely.
We talked about leverage earlier in this episode.
Yeah.
So I am currently renting, and I'm starting to like the idea of renting, where previously I thought renting was a statement of my economic condition.
Okay.
Like you can't afford to own, so you have to rent.
Okay.
Well, now I'm like, nah, son. Renting might be cheaper than owning in some cases.
Yeah, and though this is something that causes a lot of debate in our society. You got the two camps, right? You got the camp that says renting is always bad, like nothing that good can come out of renting, and then you have the other camp, which I'm in, which is like you said, it could be a great strategy. We're not saying don't ever own any real estate. What we're saying is like it could be a great way to go about building wealth because, like you said, it could be cheaper. It could allow you to live in a neighborhood that you might not ordinarily be able to live in. I'll use myself as an example on that. Like I was renting years ago and I was able to live a couple of places that I wouldn't have been able to afford to purchase in because I just wasn't ready. I didn't have the income, credit wasn't right, but I'm in the neighborhood. I'm around here with all these people that they look like they're affluent and all this stuff, so they could be acting too, but I'm here.
Right. Make that something.
I was out there with them. So it's not a bad thing. Now I want to give this example. Like sometimes people like to hear celebrity examples and stuff. So let's use Jay-Z and Beyonce. Mm-hmm. This example says that B&J had twins, Rumi and Sir. I hope that's the right names. I'm not familiar with that. But they bought this home. They got this home. It was a 10-bedroom, 14-bath estate in Malibu. Mm-hmm. And they decided to rent it. It was 16,000 square feet, and it was $400,000 a month. And this example says that they could have bought it, but it would have been $54 million. And they just felt like it was a better look to go ahead and not purchase, but rent. And then they had rented again another time in 2015. They had a home in some area called Holmby Hills, HOLMBY Hills, and they were paying $150,000 a month. So like for Jay and Beyonce, right, because they're like living this transient lifestyle, it wouldn't make sense to buy every single place that you're going to be living. You might live in Paris, London, Brooklyn, wherever. You might not want to buy all of those. You just want to be there for a period of time, keep it moving. Now, some people be like, well, why not buy it and just rent it out? But the thing about that is there's a whole set of responsibilities with that, Stu.
Right.
Where I could just come in and rent it. I don't really have a lot of responsibility and keep it moving.
That's the piece I was saying, that sometimes it could be cheaper. Something goes wrong, especially if you're talking about these celebrity deals or these super high earners.
Yeah.
I'm going to be here for a month. I'm born and raised in Chicago. I got my place in Chicago. I actually own a condo. I'm hypothetically speaking. Let's say I actually own a condo in Lake Point Towers or somewhere, Trump Towers or somewhere, but I'm always on the go.
No doubt.
And so I'll be in California for just like 2 months working on a project. I'll just rent. And then I don't have to worry about the maintenance of the, furnace. And, some of these places, they have 4 or 5 furnaces.
Yeah.
4 or 5 hot water heaters, and you got a pool that needs to be maintained, and it just rent, and man, in those cases, it makes perfect sense. So to your point, renting is not always bad. When is renting bad?
When is renting bad? I remember, you ever heard of this company called Primerica?
Yes.
Now, this is unrelated, but it makes sense. They used to have this slogan, buy term and invest the difference. Buy term and invest the difference. And I just thought of that when you asked that question. When is it bad? When you're not saving the difference. So let's go back to the example. What's an affluent neighborhood in the Chi? Like, say you wanted to live in Hyde Park. Like, not Bronzeville, like you really in Hyde Park. Like, you right off the lake. And the mortgage would have cost you $1 million. So the property would be $1 million. Your mortgage was like $50,000 a month, let's just say for an example. But then you're able to rent the property for $30,000. Renting is bad to me when you're not saving that additional 20.
But if you had it to save, why wouldn't you just buy?
Because a lot of people, no, that's a good question. So a lot of people need time to get their credit profile together. Renting is not always an indication that you can't afford it. It could just be an indication that you need to work on a couple of things. You might have a judgment on your credit. You might have a couple of medical bills that need to be cleared up. You might be in a relationship with somebody at the time where you don't really rock with them like that. Like you might be married and you know it's about, we're not going to be together 6 months from now. So I'm not about to buy something that gives that person rights that I don't want them to have later. So you could be in a relationship situation. It's a lot of different reasons. It's not just affordability.
Now, I'm always hearing, and I mean, I'm always hearing that when you buy a property, particularly if you're the developer, the rent, your mortgage note, your note is oftentimes cheaper than what rent would be.
Yeah, that's true, but the associated expenses though. So like your note, and I've been in a situation, I've had mortgages that were, the mortgage payment was cheaper than the rent, but then we go to, I got to pay for the heat, right? So when you're renting, a lot of times they cover the heat. On the rent that I got, like I know people, they'll rent and pay the heat. I didn't do that. You paying the heat, you paying the water. I'm not paying none of that. If the toilet gets messed up, Stu, who got to pay for that if you're renting? The landlord.
The landlord, yeah.
The windows need to be replaced, the landlord. So it's not just the note, the payment, it's all of the associated expenses, which there are quite a few. Let's talk about that again. You got to pay for your gas bill, light bill, repairs. That's another thing that kill people. So the furnace go out.
Oh my goodness.
You got to pay that now. You either got to get the furnace repaired or God forbid, you got to get a new furnace.
Here's another one. Here's another one. If you own the property, you're responsible for property taxes.
And that's the thing that we talked about earlier. If you don't pay them taxes, the crib could be gone.
But if I'm renting, I don't have to pay the property tax.
Nothing to do with you.
I'm not responsible.
Exactly. So I always do this work with people when we're doing, having these conversations. Like, let's add it all up and see what the total. Because I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of those misnomer things. It's like, yeah, my note was cheaper. No, it ain't, because it's the note, it's and all these 50 other things that you got to pay for. What's the total number? Is that total number cheaper than the rent? I doubt it.
Okay. Good point, E. Wow.
I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get into the stuff that's not talked about enough. Like, that's a big deal. And there's somebody that's going to watch this that's in the process of trying to go get a crib or maybe thinking about renting. We're not trying to sway you one way or the other. Just think about both sides.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because us having this conversation, even when I'm hearing it, man, my note, it's cheaper than, I'll just buy because it's cheaper than renting. But I wasn't even adding it up.
All of the
expenses. It's like, I'm just looking at the monthly. Right. No, it's not. It's the other stuff. Other stuff, right?
And if you live in like a condo or a duplex, you got another fee. You got to pay the assessment.
Association fees.
That could be a lot of money, man. And then if the building that you're in has repairs, your assessment could go up. So it's a lot, man. Now I'm gonna throw this in there too, man, just from experience. I'm gonna tell people this, and I don't mean to dissuade anybody, but man, it is not fun trying to go out and get a mortgage. Like it's really not. It takes a lot of time. They want a lot of documents. It's a lot of back and forth. So one thing I would say too, why renting is not bad, you might just be in a mental space where you don't feel like dealing with that mortgage process. Might not feel like dealing with that.
Now let me ask you a question, because you are an owner, a property owner. What what excites you about the process? Is it, it's not fun to go get it, but is it just the fact that you know that you have acquired all of these long-term assets that contribute to the generational wealth that you're establishing for your family, and that's why you do it? Or, so because I hear you say, hey, this is a tough process, but at the same time, you're in that world of acquiring property.
I'm in that world now, but for many years I rented. And I would get angry if anybody talked to me about anything other than that. So it took me time for a lot of reasons. I didn't feel like it. I knew it was a hard situation, all this different stuff. Now, so why am I doing it now? Sure, I understand the generational wealth aspect. I'm using somebody else's money. You're able to collect rent and all this other stuff. There's multiple benefits. You can leave it to your children. You can kind of put them a step ahead. So, like, why have them turn 18 and don't have any income generating assets? Like, we're at a point now where we just don't have to do that because we know better. But I would still tell a person, like, you got to be in a right. It's not a cookie cutter thing. Like, don't ever let somebody tell you you need to be buying a property. No, it depends on a couple of other factors. Now, here's the thing too, this makes my situation a little bit different. My wife, and shout out to her, but my wife is a person who will do the stuff that I don't want to do in a transaction. And that's another big thing. Like, I don't want to go look for properties and figure out the vision and all that. My wife does that. I don't want to do it. All I want to do in the transaction is focus on the finance part, which is irritating, but that I do feel more at home than I'm not trying to go see 50 properties and all. So if you have a partner, that helps too. But before that, you might be like, nah, I'm not trying to do all that by myself. It's too much.
All right.
Does that answer the question?
Sure it does. It does for me.
Okay. All right. So find out there, MSG family. And let me just do a quick check-in. This is the Money, Sex, Gen X podcast. This is season 4, episode 4, 10 things they don't tell you about stocks. You're here with me, and I got my homie, Big Stu here. We are chopping it up. We're trying to give you some value in this conversation. We just talked about number 4, renting is not always bad. Now, number 5 is a bank mortgage is not the only way to acquire the real estate, Stu.
Go ahead, man. Go in on that.
I got an example here. I used to watch tennis a lot when I was younger, and I was in love with Venus Williams. You know who that is? I'm sure.
I think I heard her name before.
Yeah, I think you heard her name a couple times, but she is the older sister of Serena. So everybody knows Serena, but Venus was doing her thing and got a little more popular initially. So I was in love with her. I used to watch her. But anyway, in 2013, she bought her mother Oracene. So we used to hear about the father a lot, but the mother, Oracene, Venus bought her mother a 4-bedroom home in Jupiter, Florida. Now, why does that matter? It doesn't matter from a celebrity bought. Who cares about that? But it's just an example of mother didn't have to get a mortgage. Her daughter just bought her the crib. Probably put the title in her name. Now it's hers. So you don't have to always get a mortgage to get the real estate. What's another example of that? People pass away and they might have you as a beneficiary, Stu. So your uncle, your auntie, your father, your mother, and they got an estate plan. They're like, hey, if something happens to me, these are the people who get the real estate. That happens all the time. And now you've got real estate that you didn't even get a mortgage on. So that's cool. Or you can have a real estate trust. So sometimes from an investment perspective, Stu, say me, you, my brother, and your cousin decide we're going to go get a property and start getting multiple properties. We might get a real estate trust, which is just a legal vehicle to drop all the properties into one thing, right? So it's like, we're taking all the properties and we're pouring it into one cup.
Okay.
So then you have the beneficiaries of the cup. And that could be me. That could be our kids, right? So they're going to get these properties that they never got a mortgage note for, but now they're going to inherit the properties.
Okay.
No mortgage. The last way is you could have a portfolio of stocks, and we're going to talk about the stock thing a little more in a few minutes, but say me and you got a stock portfolio and we're joint beneficiaries and something happens to me and you get those REITs. They're real estate investment trusts, and it's another form of stock. It's another form of real estate ownership. It's just wrapped in a stock. And so you can get that. You might not have spent a dime, but you're the beneficiary.
Okay.
So
come through, man. This is good stuff.
Huh?
No, I'm saying this is good stuff, man.
Yeah, no doubt. So the bank mortgage is not the only way. You got several different ways. Requires a little bit of planning, but basically you can kind of come up, so to speak, without spending your own money is the whole concept. You're leveraging, here's that word leverage again, you're leveraging somebody else's efforts who thought enough of you to leave you these assets.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So have you kind of seen this play out in your personal dealings with people, that people are getting properties without getting a mortgage? How does that look for you?
I have one situation. I have an older aunt who I was living in her house, and we tried to switch the deed.
Yeah.
Switch the name, the deed, the deed transfer or title transfer to avoid, financing.
Okay. Yeah.
And unfortunately, my aunt was just, she's aged a little bit, and it was too much to get her to understand what we were attempting to do.
Sure.
But it all worked out in the end. But yes. So I do understand that you don't necessarily have to go through a traditional bank and get the traditional financing in order to get a piece of property. There are other creative ways to acquire real estate.
Indeed, right. Because as we know, you could be in title or ownership, but you might not be the person actually paying the mortgage.
Exactly.
It'd be two different. Took me a long time to understand that too, Stu. I couldn't understand it, but now it's really simple. It's like one person in the deal could be the payer of the bill, and the other person is part of the ownership. It's not. Now, to me, it's not that hard to understand. So, okay. Oh, here's one other example. So in Cook County, where we live, here's another way you can get some property. The county has these land banks. And I kind of saw this a lot in Inglewood. So it's like the county has these different properties. They may have gotten them because of delinquent taxes or other reasons. They store them, they have them, and they're like, hey, we got 1,000 properties. We'll give you one of them if you do X, Y, Z. And then the person basically says, well, oh, yeah, I want to get it. I'll do this and I'll do that. They present the plan, the business plan or whatever. And they say, okay, cool. If you can agree to go ahead and do that, we'll give you the property. Or you pay $1 or something.
That's okay. Thank you for saying that. You pay $1 or something if you do this thing. Okay, that's exactly what I was about to ask you. So thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, no doubt. They also have this thing in a lot of real estate development deals. They'll have something called an RDA. It's a real estate development agreement, and it basically, some of them will say, "Hey, we'll give this to you, Stu, for $1." But we're going to memorialize in this document what you said you were going to do with this development. As long as you do it, then you will keep ownership. But if you don't, they have what they call a reverter clause, meaning if you don't do what you said you was going to do, you said you were going to build a Chipotle, but you built the McDonald's. When we find out, the ownership goes back to us.
Better do what you said you was going to do.
Better do what you said you were going to do. So we're going to talk about that more too, like how developers get these properties and all that. But that's, yeah. So now let's go to number 6. This is an interesting one. Why is real estate promoted so heavily? So 10 things they don't tell you about real estate. This one is more of a question though. Why is it that you think you hear more about, and I do think this is true in the Black community too. It's changed a little bit now with like Dr. Boyce Watkins and different people that are putting in work like yourself. But you usually hear more about real estate, or you used to, than stocks. Why do you think real estate was always promoted so heavily to us? And when I say us, I mean to Black people and not stocks.
I think part of the reason is I'm admitting I don't know if I have the right answer. I'm just going to answer your question. We're having a conversation. Maybe it's because stocks were so far removed from our ability to participate, and maybe real estate just was more tangible, it was easier to acquire. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Why do you think it is, or why is real estate promoted so heavily to us?
You know what? I think I could be totally wrong about this. This is just my opinion, but I feel like it's because if we look at it from a consumer point of view or a capitalist point of view, I'm gonna make more money off of you in real estate than I am in stocks. And now I know the stock industry has changed. It's easier to buy stocks. You don't have to pay all these little fees and all that, and that the access is a lot greater. You got Robinhood and all these different apps, so you can just jump on, put some money in there, and get it. No middleman. But even when you did have to pay, am I going to make money off of you buying a couple of stocks? Which one I'm going to make more money off of, buying a couple of stocks, or you getting a $250,000 mortgage at a 4% interest rate? And so I just think that they stand to make more money off of you in a mortgage note situation.
Yeah, and I could see that. One of the things I didn't understand, and I think maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know. I never really understood this concept, and I think I do understand it, but I don't understand it. Like, so let's say I buy a house for $100,000, right? I get a traditional 30-year note, 30-year mortgage note, which today I wouldn't do. And it's not because I'm a Gen Xer. I'm at his age. It's like for a couple $100 or more a month, this could be a 15-year. But I learned that late. So let's just say you get a 30-year, $100,000. At the end of this 30 years, you'd pay $300,000, right? And then you try to sell it. You're ready to sell, and maybe you don't get $300 for it, but you paid $300 for it,
right? And
then the bank kind of does this thing again. So this one piece of property, a great example of this is our parents. They paid $12,000 for the houses that they live in today, which are worth, in some cases, 10 times that amount today. And then the banks just keep making money on this same piece of real estate, hand over fist. But the owners don't really see that same return on the investment. That's always kind of weird to me. That the purchase price is $100,000. I'll pay $300,000. If I decide to sell, I probably won't get $300 for it. And then the bank is going to do this again. Maybe I'll sell it for $200. And then the bank, somebody else comes in, and then at the end of that 30 years, they pay $600. And it's just crazy to me how this real estate game really, really works.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess what people are banking on, to your point, is like, okay, if I bought this for $300, I hope I can get 4 or 5 when I do sell it. But like you said, that might not happen.
And when you finish paying for it, you paid well over 4 or 5. Honestly, you paid well over what you paid for real. So it's not even that. I think that's the other piece. It's like, yeah, you bought the house for $300,000, but you ain't gonna pay $300 for it. But if you can make the full 30 years payments, it's not gonna be. You would have paid $900,000.
Right, no doubt. Yeah, man. I mean, that's the bad thing about using other people's money. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is you're gonna pay because let's look at a car note. This used to really hurt me. It'd be like, man, I got this car note. My interest rate is 8-10%. you'd have paid $26,000 for a $10,000 car or something. And then on the bad side with the cars, like you don't even have the chance for an appreciation of value, as we know it's going to go down. But at least with real estate, the bank's definitely on a better end of the stick. But at least maybe if you bought a house in a good area, supposedly good area, that the value could go up, and you can kind of tap into that equity if you needed to, maybe. But it's still on that premise of the value going up. Now, here's something else that's happened in the society that ties into this, and I'm glad you brought this up. We've seen where Black people aren't getting the same appraised values for the same property that other people are getting.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another reason why, we talked about that on somebody else's show. So it's like that's another reason why it's another risk or threat that I done paid all this money and I might not get it back with a return. So something to really think about, Stu. You know, and some things you just can't control, man. I guess the only things you can control is like where you buy the property. You can control how much you pay for it, and you can try to control what the interest rate is going to be. But we don't know if the value is going to go up or down. In the transaction. So let's talk about this then, so that we're not sounding like we're dissuading people from getting real estate. What are some things that you can do to make sure you come out ahead in your purchase? What are some things that you can do along the way?
Wow. Put me on, E. Give me some tips. What are some things I could do, man? I know I could make sure that I have, that emergency 6 to 12 months of emergency money put aside. But that doesn't really affect the purchase. And, I could try to leverage somebody else's money. Give me some tips. What can I do, E?
All right, I'm going to give you a couple of things, man. Now, number one, the first thing you can do is like a sub list, but you can pay off the mortgage early.
Oh, yeah. Put a little extra in every month.
So you got a 15-year mortgage, pay it off in 10, pay it off in 5, because you're reducing all this extra money that you gave the bank.
Right.
Another thing you can do on the front end is be diligent about your interest rate at the front end of the deal, man. It's like you might have to wait a little bit, but it's like if they say, hey, if you got a 700 credit score, we'll give you a 3% interest rate, versus you got a 650 now and it's going to be 8% or 4%. You might want to wait and take that time to get into the right realm as far as interest rates. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. Now you can Airbnb.
Oh, yeah.
The Airbnb game. So I saw an episode on Earn Your Leisure, I believe, where they were talking about to somebody like that. It's a whole game you can get into where you can, everybody knows about it at this point, you can rent out your property while you still own it. And some people are doing Airbnb when they rent. So like they're renting and still Airbnb. So that's
Hey, E-Money.
Yes, sir.
As a business owner, can I write off my rent payments?
You could. You could. Yeah. Depending on how you structured the situation, you could do that. Yes. You could write off the rent payment and you could write off a everybody knows this, but you could write off a portion of your home for a home office. Yeah, you can structure it to
but
do
if
that.
let's say I'm I don't, whatever my business is that requires me to travel, I could, depending on how I structure the deal, I could potentially be writing off my rent payments.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily your mortgage payments, though.
Yeah, not necessarily your mortgage, but even with that, if you get with a CPA, there's some real creative ways that you can structure things to kind of separate yourself from the property and then come back in as a renter. So that is a thing that people do.
All within the law.
All within the law. Yeah, you just got to get the right lawyer and the right CPA to figure out how to do it, but it's definitely doable and people do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so glad you brought that up, because that's another way that you could kind of get some more footing as you're going throughout paying this mortgage. Yep. All right, so that was number 6. We kind of talked about a couple different things, but the real thing was why is real estate promoted so heavily? We gave our theories. If you're out there, let us know why you think real estate is promoted so heavily. But we're going to go to number 7, which is real estate tech is a thing. Real estate tech is a thing. And I wish I had more examples of this, but all we're saying is that there's a lot of tech companies out here that they're specific to real estate. So you got a bunch of apps out here that are specific to real estate, and it's a thing. Like they call them prop tech apps. So they're apps specifically to real estate property, and they help you do a number of different things. Just to show you how much they're progressing, venture capital firms have invested $18.6 billion to these types of companies. So they're doing very well. From 2015 to 2017, then more than 25% of that was invested in 2017 in the fourth quarter alone.
Wow.
Like the investments are coming hot and heavy in certain quarters because it's growing so much. So
coming in hot.
Yeah, so check that out. Yeah, if you're an investor out there and you like to invest in companies before they hit the S&P 500 or the major exchanges, you might catch one of these. Like there's a platform called WeFunder. Catch these companies when they're in the early stages or whatever. I know I had invested in Curl Mix recently. They're not a property tech company, but just an example. And you can get in the game on these prop tech companies. You can review all of their financials and all of that and just be like, look, I think this might pop. I'm going to put some money in.
Yeah. I know when I just was recently in my housing transition, and I think a lot of this is due to COVID, I was able to access the property on my own using an app. And just, and then, you do this form to give the feedback and things like that. So, I see this as a real thing, So,
yeah, I was trying to find an example of some, but maybe we'll throw them in the chat later. I was trying to find some specific examples. Oh, here's one called Lively, I think. But yeah, we'll throw it in the chat later, just specific examples of prop tech companies. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So real estate tech is a thing. It's not some fantasy situation that's really happening out here. Prop tech. Number 8.
Time out. Let's do this.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, real quick. I got a little distracted because I'm supposed to have a 10 o'clock. I sent them an email, see if we can push it back to 10:30.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so I'm hoping.
Trying to see if they hit you back. If not, you got to jump off, right?
Well, nah. I mean, I may have to jump over just to get them to. It's one of my deals. It's not a press. It's not a money call.
Oh, okay.
It's an exploratory conversation. It's the first meeting.
Okay.
But just wanted to give you that FYI. That's why I got disconnected a little bit because I was looking at the time.
Yeah, I figured something was going on.
Yep, sounds like shit. All right, but so I say that to say let's I don't want to. We are stretching it a little bit.
Yeah,
but let's go ahead. Yeah.
All right, we probably wrap this up in 10, 15 minutes. Though.
Well, let's try to keep the same energy without rushing it, making it like, damn, they just started rushing through it. But and I'll be editing this as well.
Okay.
Because I know it still has us at an hour and 23 minutes, but we know some of that is not all true.
Yeah, we lost about 20 minutes. So okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna pick back up at number 8.
All right, so let's go. All right, so start with number 8.
So number 8, Stu, is another thing that I don't hear talked about probably enough. Another things that they don't tell you that's definitely leveraged by those who are in the know, and that's a 1031 exchange.
I have no idea what that is. What in the world is a 1031 exchange?
So this is another one of those things I was working on as a young pup in real estate. I was doing the documents and really didn't know what the heck I was doing. But it really is when you are trying to avoid paying taxes. So you talked about earlier when a person gets a property and then they sell it. When you sell the property up to certain limits, you have to pay something called capital gains taxes. Capital gains taxes are taxes you pay on any asset when you basically made a profit. Now, there's a certain threshold, right? So there's a certain number you have to hit before it kicks in. But what a 1031 exchange does is it allows you to defer the taxes by swapping one investment property for another. And that exchange is called a 1031 exchange, and it can only be made with what they call like kind properties. And then you got certain IRS rules and limits that you have to be, within in order for it to work. But it is a thing, a 1031 exchange. So again, you're trying to avoid paying taxes on the profits of the one property that you sold, this investment property, and you're deferring the taxes till later. Now, what a lot of people do is they keep doing these transactions over and over and over so they can keep pushing the taxes out, pushing them out, pushing them out, pushing them out. Some people might die and never have paid the taxes. 1031 exchange. So that's the thing, man. It's something to check into. I had an example here for us Chicagoans. We remember this guy, Brian Urlacher. And he was a big football player here in the Chi. But I had picked up on this example of where he had a home in Illinois and he had one in Arizona. Now, I don't know if he used a 1031, but maybe he could have, right? Like, so maybe he sold his home in the Chi when he came out of the league, and maybe he did a 1031 exchange to get the one in Arizona. So that's just a potential example. But again, you're just a keyword swapping to avoid taxes.
All right, cool.
So that's a 1031. Number 9.
1031.
Developers this is 10 things that they don't tell you about real estate. Developers typically use very little of their own money.
Yeah, I like this one a lot.
Yeah, we're going back to
this one a lot.
The leverage. Yeah, no doubt. So we got an example here. And this is little older, but it was basically saying that D Rose. Yep, and you remember Luau Deng. They were both on the Bulls. But it was reported a while ago that they were on the verge at some point of closing a massive real estate deal to acquire 3 sites comprising of 23 buildings and totaling 354 multifamily units at a cost of $25.6 million. Now, I don't know if this closed, and I don't know, was this in the Chi? I don't really know where this was. We would have needed a little more detail. But what we do know is if this closed, it's not likely that they came out of their pockets, Stu, with $25.6 million.
Right. That's the value of the property, per se.
Yeah, that's the value of the property value.
It's not necessarily. And when you buy a property, I wonder if everybody knows this. I assume that everybody knows. If you want to buy $100,000 house or a $25 million book of property, you don't have to come up with all the money in full. You can, in many cases, put down, I think the traditional is 20%, but you can put down even smaller percentages to catch these properties. If you got more money, maybe you put down larger percentage of the said property value. But in many cases, you don't. So you're not putting down all the money. But to the point of this point here, number 9, you can leverage somebody else's money. So let's say I am the guy. Eric is a guy. He already told you he doesn't even want to go look at the property. He wants to handle the finance side. Let's say you come to us, it's like, man, I got this great deal. Eric is going to look at the numbers and he say, man, do you want in? And the guys like us, we want our money to work for us. So it was like, cool. I want in on it. I don't want to have to do any work. Take my money, bring it back to me in 6 months, 9 months. with interest. And then you can get the money from cats like that without using any of your own money to acquire the real estate.
True indeed. Now, I'm going to say this. If you're out there, you're probably out there and you're like, man, I got a couple properties, I'm doing my thing. How can I get in the development game though? And let's make sure we define what we're talking about. So Stu just gave this example. So the person that Stu was talking about that's coming to you to get in, they're the creative. So like all developer is saying is they're the conceptual person. They're like, you know what? We got this situation like Stu was talking about, but I'm going to orchestrate all the pieces. I'm going to find the land. I'm going to do this and do that. But essentially, that's the developer. That's the person that's orchestrating and pulling in the resources needed to do the deal. Now, you could go to people like Stu's example. And then in addition to that, once you get the people together, you can say, okay, now let's go to the city and see what kind of money, what kind of pots of money can we get from the city. Let's now go to the state. So like if you're doing affordable housing, they have this thing called LIHTC. It's low income housing tax credits. This is a whole specific niche industry, but it's basically you getting capital from getting these tax credits and selling them. All right. So again, another pot of money. Then you can go to the federal government. They have new market tax credits. Another pot that you can go out and leverage for your development. So the point is here, I guarantee you that if Luol Deng and D Rose did this $5.6 million deal, there were multiple sources or buckets of money, and they may not have put a dime out of their pocket other than like legal fees up front. And even the legal fees are typically paid out at closing. So a lot of stuff gets paid. So that even in and of itself, so you're like, well, they did pay something. So yeah, they probably put something in, but they probably got a chance to pay that at the end of the deal.
Right.
So that's pretty cool to be able to do that. So you want to be a developer, start thinking creatively about how to make a deal happen that you couldn't do on your own. Or me and Stu might be like, yo, we're going to do a development in Bronzeville. All right, we got to put our creative hats on to figure out how to make it happen, Stu.
Where in the world do you learn this stuff, Eric? Where in the world do you learn this stuff?
I learned it from working in law firms for years when I was younger, man. I was lucky enough to be at these tables and have these meetings with the city and be working on documents. I'd be working on documents and even understand conceptually what I was doing.
That is so key. I want to all of man. Listen. To our younger viewers, to our millennials, to our younger viewers, even to our older viewers. But I'm really talking to our younger viewers. If you're in college or fresh out of college or something of that nature, maybe 4 or 5 years removed from college,
life game.
You can still go get an internship. You can volunteer your time as this man. You want to learn about real estate, don't go to a real estate agent. Go to a law office and volunteer your time to make copies, put together documents, to take out the trash, to clean the bathroom,
whatever.
Just to be in the room.
No doubt.
Some of these people who are cutting these deals say, look, I just want to come and learn for free. Can I come 2-3 times a week for 2-3 hours a day?
That's right.
And put together, I'll clean your offices. I'll do whatever just to get in the room, because they are not going to tell you this stuff about real estate.
They're not going to tell you. And even if you're there doing the trash or whatever, they might not even tell you directly. You just hear it. It's by virtue of you just being in the room. Like I've been in the room getting coffee and whatever, but it's like I heard that key word that I could go back and I would hear concepts and I would go back and ask people, the lawyers, be like, well, what is this? And they'd be like, what you need to know that for?
Yeah.
It's
I can
like,
see that.
I just want to know. You know, some of them said it just like that. Why you need to know that? We just need to do this. And it's like, nah, I just want to know. You know what I mean? And they never would tell me right away. But as we got cool, after we found out we both like the same TV show, or you ain't know I could hoop, or you ain't know I had a lot of female, you know, like I got some flavor other than some title, then you tell me. You see what I'm saying? But if I'm not there, I can't even foster that.
So there's a lot of because I hear a lot of guys, you know, like, man, I'm trying to get in, I'm trying to do this. It's like, but who you hanging out with?
Who you hanging out
like
with?
Who you hanging out with? You can't do this with the guys that, if none of y'all are in those rooms having these conversations, y'all sitting around and all y'all doing, and I'm not saying none of y'all are doing this, but I've been in situations where all we were doing was making up stories about what we think is happening. We should have gone to the people who were making it happen and sat at their feet.
Indeed. And me, what I was doing when I was younger, like super young, I didn't even know this stuff existed.
Right.
I didn't even, you know, because one thing I learned in Chicago, you probably seen this, they have these programs on the south and west sides where they bring in interns from schools on the south and west side to work in law firms. It's a whole program that exists in downtown. So you'll see these students down there, and they're from the south and west side. They in these firms, like they're in there doing all types of stuff. So, you know, and that's cool that they have a program like that. But in other cities, I don't know. But I know they have that program in Chicago. And a lot of those kids go on to go to law school. They go get MBAs, like a lot of stuff, because they got sparked while they were there doing some little task. They might have been scanning, printing stuff, going to get caught, whatever it is. But like you said, you're in the environment.
Get in the environment.
Yeah.
Developers use little of their own money. Let's go, E. Let's go to number 10.
Right. Little of your own money, other people's resources. So that's key. Last one, which is a very cool one. I love this concept, and then Stu, is passive ways. So, you know, it's not good to be passive aggressive, but it's good to be passive aggressive when it comes to money.
Dang.
That might be a t-shirt. Be passive aggressive when it comes to money.
How about be passive aggressive about your money?
I love it. Passive aggressive about your money. So passive ways to make money in real estate. So what we're saying is you're not directly involved, but you're getting the benefit. Wholesale. Wholesale. Invest in REITs. We just talked about that. Rental properties when you have a property manager. Look like Stu is writing that t-shirt idea down. Your 401k. So you might be in a portfolio that has real estate and don't even know it. So you're getting dividends and all these different treats and tricks and stuff that you don't even know about. And then we talked about Airbnb. So Airbnb is cool because you got to do a little something on the front end. But once you got your property advertised, it's set up where people can just click when they want to rent it. And then you get out the way and let them do their thing. I want to talk about wholesaling a little more.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you. I've heard about this wholesaling thing, and I'm so sorry. I don't understand how the hell to do it.
So let me see if I can. Stu, let me see if I can explain this in the most simple way.
How the hell do you do this?
We're going to use you and I.
Come on, man, because I want in. It sounds simple. I want in.
All right, here's wholesaling. Eric, I go out and I get into a contract on a home for $250,000.
Stop right there.
Yep.
Getting into a contract means that you put the earnest money up?
Yes.
Is that what that means?
Yeah, it means that there's a document that I signed saying I want the interest to potentially get this property. I want you to take it off the market. Take it off.
Okay.
Now, in Illinois, they got a standard contract for residential that everybody typically uses. You sign it, it's got the earnest money and all these other little provisions in there. Now, here's the thing. Eric signed it. What you got to make sure of, though, is that it has this provision in there that says Eric can give his rights in the contract to Stu.
Okay.
Eric can give his rights in the contract to Stu, that's wholesaling. Because what Eric does is says, look, I ain't trying to buy this. I just want to have control of it so I can get it to somebody else and get my cut. So I go to Stu and be like, fam, I got this contract for $250 for this property. It's a good deal. Here's the details. You can get it from me if you want. And you're like, yeah. I assign there's a document, I assign my interest over to you. Now you got it. You can go rock out and do whatever else you want to do. Continue on to close it, assign it to somebody else, whatever you want to do. So people do this as a business model because they have no intention of going to closing. They just have a network of people who would take it from them and go to closing, and they basically get a finder's fee, which would be thousands of dollars. This ain't no nickel and dime stuff because they're out there looking for stuff. Like I said, Eric don't want to look for properties. So I got a person in my network that will look and come to me with deals. Stu wants to do the deal. We assign the interest over to Stu. I'm out. I got my cut. Now everything is on Stu.
When you sign that interest over to me, do I give you your $1,000 back then, or what's happening with the earnest?
Yeah, you're gonna give you the earnest money, and then that's it.
And then at the end of it, though, I'm giving you a finder's fee when we close.
Either you'll give it to me up front, or you'll give it to me later, whatever we decide on.
Okay.
But the principle remains the same. I'm out, you're in. That's wholesale, and people make their whole living out of that because it's like. Think about this now. Let's think about this from a common sense perspective. The beauty of this is I don't need a dime other than the initial earnest money to get into this deal. And you could assign it before the earnest money is even due. You could do that too. But it's like all I need is the same $1,000 that I could keep using over and over on every deal, get into the contract, assign it over, and then I'm done. I don't need any other money. I made 5 bands off that. Then I go on to the next one.
The wholesaler is basically, the wholesaler needs to have a client though, or a client network of people who are interested in properties.
True indeed. That's the only way to work. It's the only way to work.
And then as the wholesaler, I'm out living my life, doing what I do. I see properties that are popping up. I'm like, this would be a good one. Let me get the interest. Let me control it. I still got questions. Now I understand it. Now I just have questions about how to do it. And if you all have these same questions, you might have to hit E up for a personal consult on this. Because this is super interesting to me about how this works. But I think I understand it much better now.
True indeed. And yeah, I have no problem offering general questions. But I'm not going to give you legal advice. But
right.
I'll refer you to somebody that can put their license on the line and say, hey, this is what it is. But yeah, I can definitely answer any general questions about wholesaling. And guess what, Stu? There's platforms on social media of guys that their whole platform is dedicated to that.
Yeah, teaching you.
What I mean by that is like the educational piece. Like
yeah. I'm sure these people can find somebody on TikTok to teach them. Hey, listen, real talk though. TikTok. I'm gonna be doing this when we get to season 5.
Right.
Our next season, future shows. I'm gonna be giving Stu's predictions. Stu's predictions. I predict that TikTok will be the fastest growing learning platform out. There are so many great teachers on TikTok, man. You can learn I think even more than YouTube.
No, I didn't know that. I don't think I've ever been on you. I've never been on TikTok directly.
There is a reason
that people put on other stuff, but I've never been on. I'm sure I'm missing out tremendously.
No, you're not, because it's all a rabbit hole. You will get caught up. So you're not. But from we talked about if you want to learn more and where you can go to learn, people have platforms. But that's just, there are so many great tips, and that's why people are getting caught up. I'm not on TikTok. I am on TikTok, but I'm not on there like that. But yeah, man, there's some people giving away some jewels
Yeah, I believe
on TikTok in 10 seconds, 20 seconds of just bombs of jewels.
Yeah, they give you them bars.
Like, wow.
No doubt.
Wow.
And I'm going to tell you this. I'll tell you somewhere I know you can go for sure, which is IG. Instagram.
Oh, man.
There's plenty of cats on there dropping straight jewels about everything we talked about today, including wholesaling. If you're out there and you need to know exactly what's up, hit us up and I'll give you some people. But yeah, no doubt. Killing it. So that's 10 passive ways to make money in real estate. We talked the most about wholesaling. We got the REITs, which these are real estate investment trusts, which is real quick. It's just you buying a stock in a company that does all the legwork. And all it is. And you get a dividend or you get money paid back to you as you go along the way. You can get a rental property and get somebody else to do the legwork, which is the property manager. We talked about your 401k. You probably got some real estate stocks in there that you're benefiting from and don't know it. Check into that. Airbnb. And then, go on these social platforms to learn more or hit us up and we'll be glad to tell you, put you in the right direction. Put you in the right direction.
E-Money is the man for this. Eric McLeod is the man for the real estate game. I always call him the financial whisperer.
Whisperer.
This guy right here.
I tried to.
Oh man, he's on point.
So that was
thing
they don't tell you about real estate. We hope you got some jewels and nuggets out of that. You know, we try to add value and not just talking about a bunch of cookie cutter stuff. So we try to be specific, gave you some personal experiences that we consider life game. We want you to do it quicker than we did. Like, we don't want you waiting 30, 40 years to do this. Do it now. Dive in on some of these topics a little bit deeper. And always you can hit us up to talk more about real estate. Stu, we got one more segment or maybe two more. We got the one of my favorite things that we do, which is characters from corporate. We'll run through that real quick. If you're out there, characters from corporate is your chance to vent. Talk about how crazy the people are that you work with or find out if you're the crazy one. But it's another life game outlet where it's like you can get some feedback on your corporate situation. It's kind of hard to get feedback sometimes in corporate because you don't want to show your hand and feel like you look crazy. But we will give you some feedback, me and Stu. So this one is this week's characters from corporate says hi. And you can submit these on our website. Just send us a message anonymously. Tell us what's up. This one says, hi, I'm a 32-year-old black man from Wilmington, Delaware.
Shout out to the DMV.
Yep. Work at a manufacturing plant on an assembly line. I recently discovered in myself that I have worked at this plant for so long because I'm afraid to push my way into the corporate world. I do not have a college degree, but a deep desire to be in somebody's boardroom. Wow. Helping deals go through and really just use my intelligence on a deeper level than I am currently. I guess I'm a character that's trying to get to corporate. Any thoughts on how I should proceed to make this transition? Man, 32 years old, Wilmington, Delaware, works at a manufacturing plant, wants to be in corporate, trying to get their students up.
When you sent this over, I digested it. The only thing that I think, first of all, stop you sound like a victim, bro. You sound like a victim. You're not the victim. Get your confidence up. Nobody cares about the degree stuff, unless they say you have to have a degree. Your experience counts. So get your head out your ass. Stop playing the victim. Stop downplaying your ability. Hold your head up. Throw your shoulders back. Have some self-confidence and let the people know what you desire and go for it. Stop being afraid. You're not the victim. And I'm reluctant to call you the character. Maybe it's just lack of self-esteem, right? But that's my take on it. If you sound like you would add some value to the boardroom. But stop playing the victim role. Get out of there, man. And go for what you know, bro. Go for what you know.
Big Stu, let them have it. And said it with love. You know, we're not judging anybody, non-judgmental, but we got to give it to you now. So that's Stu's take. My take is the same. We just talked about how they have internship programs. There's a way to get creative and get in the door. Stop worrying about the degree. I agree with that. Degrees are, and people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but the college degrees are meaning less and less as time goes on. And I say this, and you can get mad if you want. I don't mean it to be judgmental, but I've said this even to my own kids. I believe that college in the future is going to be somewhere that only the lazy people go.
Dang! Bomb!
Only the lazy people will go to college. Wow. Why? Because things have changed, technology, global access, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my feedback. Characters from corporate.
So are we saying, is this guy a character?
No.
No.
He can't be a character from corporate because he ain't there yet.
Damn, man!
You know what I mean? But you're not quite there yet. So you're not a character. You might be a character from something else, but not a character from corporate. So
we love you, bro. Thanks for coming.
Love you, Delaware. Thank you for writing in. And of course, you're a black man, so we're here to support. Hit us up if we can do anything. Might be able to shoot you in a few directions for internships.
Let's get into it, man. We have our music's pool artist listen.
All right, I can't wait for that. Right. Always a banging artist. I can't wait to see who we got this week.
We have a brand new artist. Her name is Wells Mattingly. This is a real chill song. We're just gonna go ahead and get into it. You can catch it at musicspool.com. I'm gonna play some Wells Mattingly every day, right here.
Musicspool.com.
Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. Baby, I want everything. Baby, I want every way. Mark my name on every day, 'cause I'ma be there every day.
Yeah.
Everything, baby, I want every way. Mark my name on every day, 'cause I'ma be there every day. I can make my money smile, joy division, Kennedy. Off with the majority. Hit me up and then the slide up to where the horses stay. Money's moving out the way just to show seniority. No having no loyalty and no talk to my associates. We make money. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We make money. Baby, I want everything. Baby, I want everything. Sunday, Friday, Sunday, Thursday, Monday.
Hey, they got to go to musicspool.com to hear the rest of that, bro.
Man, that's my type of track right there, man. I like that.
Yeah, bro.
Wells Mattingly, that's you said the name?
Wells Mattingly.
Wells Mattingly, musicspool.com. I'm going to give Music Spool a fat shout because that is somewhere you go to see emerging artists. And it's not just emerging artists, it's emerging artists with quality music. I've been on there many times. It's a real thing that you need to check out. Musicspool.com.
Absolutely. Check it out, man. Looks like that is our show for today.
That's our show, man. Thank you all for tuning in. Season 4, episode 4. 10 things they don't tell you about real estate.
About real estate.
We'll see you
all. Until next time, y'all.
Peace.